Got it.
Welcome, my loves. This is the story behind the story, exclusive interviews with very soon to be published FEISTY authors. Red Thread has coordinated a collaboration amongst 19 women, each sharing their story. We are joined today by Brandee Melcher, amazingly no connection or relation to me, except now we are co-authors in this new book. Brandee, welcome and congratulations, my love.
Thank you. So good to be here. So this is all new and exciting, and interestingly ended up in here kind of like happenstance.
And that's so much of how things happen, right? Like the right people at the right time, the thing pops up in front of you, and if it fits, then you say yes. So you've written a chapter for FEISTY. This is your first publication, correct?
Correct. Yes. I mean, unless you want to count email subscribers and Facebook posts, but yes, this is
no. Let's call
official.
Yeah, let's call a book. It still deserves the credibility and authority that comes with the hard work. What's one of the, I'm going to dive into a couple questions and then I'm going to ask you a little bit more about who you are and what you do. But what was something that you learned either professionally or internally through the process of writing your story and sharing it in a collaborative container?
Well, for one thing, I started out with a story. Basically, how we ended up kind of here is I started the conversation with a fiction story, kind of a fairy tale, short fairy tale kind of story. And then in that story that was semi-autobiographical, semi-not, because it was fairy tale, it had magical components. Ended up here, actually probably what ended up in the book is the third or fourth attempt, because I wrote more ethereal pieces to start with. And then as I was writing those and clarifying those and editing those and ultimately scrapping and starting fresh, there was the story that ended up in the book is one that I told many years ago verbally to friends and family, or really friends. And it was one all these years later that I forgot about. The story I tell happens to me when I'm 11. I'm going to be 37 this year. And as I was writing this chapter, it was just kind of like, oh, hey, I'm still here. And this was actually a pretty pivotal moment in your life that you forgot about or forgot was here, which is very integral to what I work with and women reconnecting with little you. So I refer to little Brandee in a lot of things. And she's been showing me a lot of stories that I've forgotten about. The joys of having children of my own, as things happen with them. And then little Brandee will pop up and say, hey, remember that time? Sometimes it's a very convenient moment for her to recognize that story. And other times I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to put this down for a second, sweetie, and we'll come back to it later. So professional or personally, it's reconnecting to those stories that got me to where I am today and realizing, oh, there's this little piece here. Oh, that makes sense why I do this. Okay. I don't do this because I'm crazy. It's because there's actually a legitimate reason behind this.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is what I hear we all actually go through is the iterative process of writing, is that maybe we think we're going to tell one story, and when we sit down to write it, or in the editing process, we discover a different story, and shift the relationship with what we thought we were talking about. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
This happens, certainly happens to me, but it happens to a lot of our authors, that the discovery of the story that needs to be told doesn't always start here. We, set in one direction and like, oh, actually, let's go. We're going over there. And I love that that there is that sort of stronger voice that is discovered in the process. You mentioned how the story that you share links to the work that you do. Can you tell us about that work?
Yes, so I am the creator of the Unmothered Collective. It's a Facebook group. And in that group, we look at patterns we have in our parenting journey as mothers and those that identify as women, and identify traits that we have now, such as codependent traits, such as disciplinary actions we take, and recognizing, taking the time to gently recognize where those came from, because you didn't just wake up today and have these traits. These are things that you witnessed growing up, or things that you actually did growing up but didn't realize what you were doing. And chances are your mother or your parental figure, your aunt, your grandmother, they did those things because you were watching them do those things. And it goes back centuries, and it goes back generations.
Yeah.
And I feel like we are in a point in society to really have the time and space to recognize those things, because yes, many of us, depending on where we are socioeconomically, we are still surviving. And also we are been in a global pandemic. So literally survival has been what the world has been doing. And women in particularly, due to the invisible workload, we've been carrying a lot of this responsibilities with this. And the way that we carry these responsibilities, we can go back generationally and look at that. And when we interact with our children, there are certain times where we'll react to them and it doesn't feel good within us. And we're not really sure why that doesn't feel good. But then because we don't know why it doesn't feel good and we don't understand where that came from, we still keep doing it. And therefore we're unintentionally passing something along that
Absolutely.
Our body is trying to say, stop, don't do this. But we don't take that time or have that time to stop in that moment. So in the Unmothered Collective, it's about recognizing that internal signal, your little you, like that reaction is your little you popping up and saying, hey, look at me, pay attention, please, let's talk about this. And helping you
don't hand this bad behavior down. You didn't like it when it happened to you. Yeah, amazing.
So that's
changing that matrilineal inheritance, right?
Yeah, so essentially changing your family story, breaking the bonds of intergenerational trauma, a chain at a time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to be a link at a time.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you bring that up, because so much of the work that we do at Red Thread is about huge change through insignificant little steps, right? Huge change can't be done all at once without creating more trauma even. And so it's the slow, gentle, persistent, the little actions that make the most impact. And so I love the alignment there. The title of this collection of stories that we're publishing is called FEISTY. Why, in your assessment and from your perspective in the world, why is FEISTY such a vital quality for women these days?
It's honestly how any change has ever been made, is by being feisty. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is one of my most favorite icons. And you've got Frida Kahlo up there. She's one of my most favorite icons. And those women changed history, not only in their world, but they changed the history for future generations. And by not being quiet, by making a scene, Frida did it with her art and with her clothing. RBG did it literally with laws in the United States
Mhm.
and by setting precedents with that one. And so if these women, as well as many, many others, had not done those and not had been feisty and vocal in their own right, there's so many things that we would be missing. You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't fight the way that she fought. Women, it may have taken so much longer for women to get bank accounts in their own name without their husbands. Frida Kahlo, had she not said, no, I'm going to wear the fashions of my people, her people wouldn't have been properly recognized for the beauty and the culture and the creativity that they have. And she was on, you know, an international stage. And she said, no, I'm going to stand in my right, and I'm going to stand here. And you can't accept and appreciate my art if you can't accept and appreciate me.
Mm. Well, and I love the impact that one single person can make, right? Again, it feels like it's too small, right? It's not enough, just one person doing her thing. But you've just given us two examples of one woman doing her thing that has ripple effects, not just beyond her family and her community, but throughout time and in unimaginable ways, right? Um, and when we feel like maybe we don't, who am I to, when the reason the Red Threads logo is the drop, it's this is my drop, and here's the impact that I can make with my single drop. The choice, every conversation that we have with our little ones, the conversations, what we choose to share and how we choose to show up in the world, it's so much more significant than we often think it. And so I love the what is possible when we allow ourselves to be feisty. Yeah. What what's one thing that you're super excited about in terms of becoming a published author?
It's something I said once upon a time I wanted to do. And now I'm actually doing it through imperfect action. There's, you know, a lot of things behind the scenes of, you know, that we're all of us are doing, or 19 of us are doing. And I look at some of these, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have any of this stuff. Okay, let me quickly do something. And it's by taking that imperfect action. And no, it may not be, you know, Michelle Obama qualities, but then again, this is where I'm at right now, and this is what I can do in this moment. And it's been taking that imperfect action each and every day of putting this together that has been really interesting to see how I got here, because how I got here was 2 years ago. I met Adrienne, and she, you know, I think it was last year, maybe earlier this year, that she introduced, oh no, it was been last year because it's just now 2022. You know, she introduced me to you and to this collective. And so, you know, something from 2 years ago, and from somebody, and I met Adrienne from somebody that I met
Yep.
3 years ago.
Chance connections,
So,
right? Little seeds.
Yeah, so it's just been coming here and watching this imperfect action each and every time that I've taken imperfect action has brought me here to this, to today, to doing this. So it's been neat.
Yeah. And I think the words that you've said the most often are feisty and imperfect action. And I think there's no room for perfection, right? We're not Michelle Obama because I don't have a staff of 150 people.
Yeah.
Do you have a staff of 150 people?
I wish.
You have an entire like team to get you prepped? Nope, this is all we can do, but we do it anyway, right? And I think that's through the collective voices are like, this is me. And each of the stories that are shared in this incredible collection are, this is me, being me, adding my single drop and letting the impact ripple from there. I'm so glad that you've been a part of this experience. I'm really excited to see as the book comes out what other people's takes on it are. Really hoping that we all inspire a little bit more feistiness or the bravery to show where we each already are feisty. Thank you so much for joining us both in the writing and in this podcast. We're going to share more about what Brandee does in the show notes. So if you want to reach out to her and learn more about the Unmothered Collective, please check her out and say hi there. And you can pre-order or order Feisty on Amazon. Have a beautiful day. Talk to you all soon.